Welcome back to Root Causes. We are working on our marathon series with our repeat guest, Bas Westerbaan, about PQC, MTC, MOUSE. Boss, you dropped a nice segue, a good teaser at the end of the last conversation we had about the whole world of private PKI. So we've had a lot of focus as we've been talking about MTC in the web PKI. And in the web PKI, it's going to be very clearly codified exactly what you have to do. There's going to be rules. If you don't do them, you're not going to be compliant. This is necessary because of the nature of the web PKI. But private PKIs are a whole different ballgame. And what's going to happen there?
So it depends. So one,
sorry. There you go. Short episode. Excellent. Thank you. No, please.
Great being here.
Let's go down a level.
No, so I mean, we defined how to do PQ without all the fancy Merkle Tree stuff. We know how to do that now. It just comes with drawbacks, right? And the two drawbacks that MTC solves that your private PKI might want to solve as well is the size problem. I mean, do you care about the size? If you don't care about it, who cares?
Maybe you don't, right?
And the second is downgrades, right? We had a whole episode talking about downgrades. In a web PKI, we need certificate transparency for downgrades. And if certificate transparency is crumbling, doesn't work well, and so we need to fix certificate transparency, make it PQ so that the downgrade story is solved there. So that's the two things. And if your private PKI also has difficulty with downgrades or with the sizes of the post-quantum certificates, then this is worth looking into, seeing if Merkle Tree certificates would work for your private PKI.
So hypothetically, if I control my own network and I have no worries about signatures, sizes, don't care at all, and I'm going to enforce 100% PQC compliance, and if you're not PQC compliant, you just can't connect, then the MTC, you're saying MTC isn't really necessary.
No, you can just go ahead and deploy plain PQ as is, yes.
So are you?
Okay. Sorry, I forgot. There's one little advantage. If you have a slow HSM. So one other advantage is that because Merkle Tree certificates, it signs these three heads, right? So one signature signs a lot of certificates at once. And so you can only sign. So you only need to sign. Even if you issue 1,000 certificates every second, you only need to sign one tree head. Right. So if you have a jerry-rigged HSM, which got
so depending on your volume and your HSMs, you may care about that. That's fair. But there still is a realistic scenario where in my internal PKI, I just really don't care. Yeah. So are you imagining in the real world that means that there's going to be both MTC and classic architecture solutions, and that IT practitioners, enterprise IT practitioners, are going to be running some of each?
Yes.
Okay.
We will have at Cloudflare. We have an internal. So most of our internal PKIs, they will probably be fine without MTC, and we're working to deploy that now without MTC. And in some others, we are considering MTC, but it depends on whether it will cause us trouble. So it's a decision. Yeah.
Bas, when I think about private certificate authorities that have constraints where large signatures just aren't going to work, types of people like smart home appliances, various kinds of IoT devices, maybe even operational technologies. A lot of those folks, if they're really running a good private CA today, a lot of them have chosen ECC because there was some advantages of just how quick, very low latency to issue and nice small certs. And so those folks, in my mind, would look at a Merkle Tree certificate meaning an X509 that's based off a hash path, right? So therefore nice and lightweight. Do you foresee that being one of the killer use cases for MTC in private, or, just like to hear your opinion?
I mean, sizes definitely are huge problems for some people, right? And if it doesn't fit, it doesn't fit. So that's really hard. But then the question becomes: you still need to be able to pull those landmarks in some way or another for the verifier to make sense of this, right? To get the small certificate, you need to have the landmark. So you need to have that kind of a channel, trusted channel, to get those landmarks in. Not trusted, by the way. You can co-sign them. Doesn't anyway. So it might be. So if you happen to have a PKI where this is set up, where the verifier has an ability to pull those landmarks in from some way, maybe because they already use CRLs for revocation. If you already use CRLs for revocation, the size is a problem. Yeah, probably MTC might be a solution. Yes, that's what
I think in a lot of these use cases, there is no real concept of revocation going on at all. They're so constrained that they're kind of depending on very short certificate lifespans in order to be able to mop away the concept of revocation, because it's really not possible. So, yeah, I mean, we could probably workshop an entire day going through each of these use cases and determining, is it a good idea, is it not a good idea, how would you architect it?
There's so many ways the dimensions there's so many dimensions to it, right? Is the server online or not? Is the client online or not? How fast can the server update things? How fast can the client update things? Does the client have an expectation of privacy? Right. This is one of in the web PKI. You can't OCSP. People don't like privacy. Does the server have an expectation of privacy? And all of these might differ for each of the PKIs, right? So it's really very hard to think ahead of time. And so this is one of the reasons why I would love to invite people with big, interesting PKIs with a PQ problem to go to the plans working group and see if Merkle Tree Certificates might work out for them.
Yeah. The last episode we just recorded, Bas invited basically the whole world to join the plants working group at IETF, because of the fact that if you have an interest in this is the ideal time to be speaking up. And that's why I asked the question the way I did, because and you answered perfectly, Bas, which is there are many, many dimensions of usage pattern, and some things are going to be important to you and some things are not, and that's really going to determine how you're going to architect your future PKI. I think that Tim, tell me what you think about this, but really I think what we're coming to in this episode is the fact that I think that Merkle Tree Certificates for private can be an incredibly powerful idea for people who have this large signature problem, and therefore, how you implement it becomes the question, and putting your input into the plants working group could really help you out here. But on the other hand, classical post-quantum quantum resilient private CAs will exist that have nothing to do with MTC, will exist in the future for people who might not get any advantage out of the small signature.
I think it's interesting that we're imagining a future where, and again, a sysadmin, an IT practitioner at an enterprise is going to be asked to make this decision. And I worry, are all of these individuals going to have the background and the knowledge to make the right decision? And what do we have to help them with that?
I'll make a comment, Bas, and then you can. I'm going to let you have your full thinking on this. But I think that we're at a point where most people don't know what Merkle Tree Certificates are, and don't think of them outside of public, because that's the only context in which they have been spoken about. This is probably the first podcast in the universe talking about.
The fact that the folks at Cloudflare made this decision is a little unfair. You guys probably know more about this than most people do, right?
Yeah, we're looking right at you, Bas.
So, in a way, it's. I don't think you have to make the decision in the sense that your post-quantum certificate, which you install, it could just be a Merkle Tree certificate already, where you don't know, right? If the support in TLS libraries is there for standalone Merkle Tree certificates, then they will just be understood and accepted. So it's not So if you really need it, right, then you need to know in advance whether you really need it. And probably in a lot of private PKIs, they don't really need it, probably in a lot of cases. And if they hit it, okay, then they can know. So I think it's a problem of marketing in a way, and we didn't do a great job in first we tried to let's do this in a completely new way and solve all the things, whereas now if you actually it fits in a lot of the same the shape, it fits in a lot of the same boxes as it does today already, right? In a way it's not that different from does my whatever it is.
So the path of least resistance for me then as a sysadmin might be, I just start using MTC because it's supported by my equipment. I just don't care. And it's the certs I get and I just use them and it's all fine. And I never really have to worry about it. Is that correct?
Yeah. And maybe it's also you can scale up and scale down, right? There's some Merkle Tree Certificates has bits and bobs for private PKI where you can use them or you cannot use them. So one of them is the whole log, right? The CA publishes this log, which is then mirrored, like the certificate transparency style thing. In a private PKI, do you really need to publish the log? I mean, in some cases you don't care about it. You only use the tree to get the small certificates, and you only need to remember the landmarks. The log, you can forget about it. So that's where you don't use that part of MTC. Another is maybe you actually do care about the log because of the downgrade attack, where one way, if you have a CA, maybe you don't trust the team for this, or you may be worried of exploitation. You can have the CA publish this log, where it's not like monitored as extremely as with certificate transparency, but where at least you have the log published and a different team monitors that and cross-references it with your certificate lifecycle management system to see if the right things are issued. And it gives you a certain cryptographic guarantee that something couldn't been changed in the past because the Merkle tree. So you can turn off and turn on, and in that case, you don't necessarily care about the landmark certificates because you don't necessarily care about the size, but you do care about that they're inside of the Merkle tree. So it's depends on your use case, what you want out of it.
Bas, you've just put an idea in my head that I want to share with the listeners here, which is today's private certificate authorities don't have similar concepts like the Web PKI around transparency, certificate transparency. Being now that we're going to have, two classes, either PQC or legacy, we have to worry about downgrade attacks. And that's going to be true for everybody, whether it's Web PKI, public or private. So I think what you've just said subtly, and I'm going to try to surface here, is in the future, building and designing and architecting a private certificate authority system or multiple private CAs, considerations of transparency of how the certs are being used, and which is hand in hand with how you actually prevent downgrade attacks. It used to be just like in Web PKI, you didn't need certificate lifecycle management in order to, you just got your cert and you went off and did your work. In tomorrow's world, certificate lifecycle management in private certificate authorities becomes, I think I would say, critical, Bas.
Yeah, you need to keep track of where are those downgrade certificates, right? Where are those? You need to make sure that there's not a classical certificate for a legacy server for a server that's upgraded, because then there's a downgrade. Yeah.
So thankfully, because of the fact that it all comes off of a Merkle tree, which is the equivalent of where the transparency is coming from, the issuance and the transparency are one. That's a fantastic feature, but it does mean you have to be keeping track of where's what and what the context is. Okay. Yes. No, that's huge. That's a huge architectural implication, which is where I'm glad we landed on that here in this podcast, because if your mind hasn't been swimming already by listening to Bas's other episodes, then it should be by now. So, Bas, any other comments about Merkle Tree Certificates with respect to private? Because it's a surprising, I think for a lot of the listeners, it'll be a surprising concept. I'm so glad you brought it up here. Any other comments about it?
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm a web PKI guy, so that's what I think about day and night. But private PKIs, they are. I mean, I don't even know the richness of it, right? So go to the plans working group, and then I will repeat the invitation. It is not a work item yet, but I expect the working group will adopt a document to look at how to use MTC in private PKIs, how to use just the transparency, or maybe auditing is a better word, the auditing, cryptographic auditing bits of it, or how to use the landmark bits of it, and when it's useful, when it's not useful, and that requires input, right? We need to hear from private PKIs what are their constraints, and see where this might help and not. Yeah.
Perfect place to land. Thank you so much, Bas.
Thank you. This has been Root Causes.